we've been here for so long and there's just so much history here. I had no idea what we would find. I've been genuinely surprised at who we've actually been acting for in the past. It really has made me reflect on, where we've been and where we're going. Right, what have you got to show me then? Look at all these boxes.
Here we have, Jo, a selection of things that we've found. All of these old deeds, parchments, I suppose.
Parchment is any animal skin, really, and parchment was used because obviously it lasts forever and ever. And it's got this seal at the bottom here, and that one says 1837. Yeah. So seals were used to not only identify the people signing the documents, but they were also used to seal them. They would have a document like this.
Right.
That might be a letter or something folded up,
right.
And then they would put a seal,
at the bottom,
so that it kept the letter contents private. But they were often very highly decorated. Oh my word, look at this one. Look at that.
Oh, I can shit them out.
I know.
It's incredible, isn't it?
Can you imagine how long that took to write out by hand?
Okay, the only other thing we've got here, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle.
Wow.
The writer of Sherlock Holmes
yeah.
and The Hound of the Baskervilles. There are boxes of what I believe to be
publishing
rights. Really, we're going to have to speak to a specialist or somebody who knows about the life and time of Conan Doyle and his works, because this may be, there is so much information here. I don't know quite why we just have all this.
Well, let's try and find out. Thanks very much for coming today, Callum. I've asked you here today to have a look at some of our documents. A few weeks ago we moved here, but we were based for a very long time in a Queen Anne building in Chesham called the Berry. And over a long period of time we accumulated a lot of documents in the cellars, in the attic of this very large old building. Perhaps I could get the first box and show you what's in that.
So we have a very deteriorated seal here, but this one looks to be in decent condition. There is a bit of sort of wear and tear, but that's sort of a given for something that is,
1744.
Yeah, exactly. It's quite old.
I picked this one because it had such beautiful sort of, I don't know what that is, engraving on really.
But this border work it's a nice way of reminding people how important a document like this is. Border work like this is a way of sort of showing someone's allegiance. So we can see there's lots of
symbolism there.
Yeah, huge amount of symbolism. So we've got the royal seal here. So we can see this one is from George II. We can see in this period it is quartered, so you've got England, Scotland, Ireland, France has been represented there. It was very much, it is spelling out the borders of the land. It is saying, who is responsible for it, who it is being sold to, and how much.
So what's interesting for me is that when I first became a solicitor, we used seals a lot. We put them on lots of documents, well, principally deeds. We had seal presses, so we would put a red disc, sticky red disc on a document, and then we would emboss that with the company seal, and it had the company registration number. So there was a very long sort of history of attaching seals to documents, which is, I think it's almost completely disappeared now. So here are some papers that are a bit more modern. We were quite surprised to find papers relating to Arthur Conan Doyle in our cellars. There's an awful lot of correspondence with publishers in New York, in Germany, so obviously they were translated, and he was obviously publishing stories in instalments and selling them as he was writing the instalments.
So I know he was not actually too much of a fan of the Sherlock Holmes character.
Yes.
It earned him a lot of money. I think he did his first story when he was age 27 and got paid, a decent amount for it. But over time, as it became more and more popular, it became something that he kept on having to write rather than writing the things he enjoyed. He also wrote a huge amount of science fiction and short stories, things like that. But in order to pay the bills, was quite often having to write Sherlock Holmes stories. I think at one point he even tries to, in one of the stories, he kills Sherlock Holmes off. And there was such an uproar about him killing off the character that a few years later he very meekly wrote The Hound of the Baskervilles and was like, oh fine, okay, I'll bring him back. He hated writing the character so much that he actually increased the prices that he was charging his publishers. and no matter how high he put it, they would still be willing to pay for it.
So what have you got there?
So this is a letter from Cecil Warwick referring to the making of adaptations for broadcasting purposes from the stories of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. In making the adaptations, which Lady Doyle has authorised in that previous letter, we will take care to proceed and follow each broadcasting with a clear statement to the effect that it is an adaptation from Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's story entitled so-and-so. I think this is actually after he died, and hence they're dealing with Lady Conan Doyle rather than the man himself.
I think this is probably a letter from perhaps us, the
Yeah,
solicitors,
yeah.
advising her on a contract that's come from America.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is that this would be sort of the first time that the stories would be adapted for radio and television,
Yes.
because obviously, well, not television in this case, but radio, because obviously radio is just becoming a way of authors publishing their work, really. So it's quite interesting.
Yeah, this is really, really early copyright
Yeah.
sort of claims, and working out obviously who owns something if it's been adapted.
This correspondence is all clipped together, so I imagine it all relates to this adaptation, if we're to go through it. Oh, we've got one from NBC here.
Oh, lovely.
Look at that. So this is October 1931, and this is the original logo for the NBC, the American National Broadcasting Company.
Yeah.
Callum, thank you so much for coming in and really expanding my knowledge of these lovely documents, and maybe, who knows, maybe we'll find some of them turning up in the National Archives and in the Buckinghamshire Archives.
Fingers crossed.
Thank you very much.
That's all right.
I was shocked, I suppose is the right word, at what we found. I felt like I was going back into the past, to a time when I started as a solicitor, and then it brought home to me how much things have really changed. It was the comparison between, gosh, I know how to sew a will, but I'm not sure any of the other trainees in the firm know how to do that. It did mark the change that there has been over a relatively short period of time. Moving to this building is really a symbol of that. It's moving away from that formality to the modernity and an office where we can be relevant. Now I hope that the new solicitors and the new lawyers and people that join us walk in here and think this is a modern, vibrant law firm moving forward into the future, not looking back to the past. This building is fun and warm and friendly, and it's reassuring, and I think it exactly matches who we are and what we want to achieve.